I'm going to give us a whole bunch of statements to think about, and then for each statement, I want us to determine whether we think the statement is true, and if it's true, great. But if the statement is false, let's actually provide a counterexample. Let's take a look at some conditional statements. Here's one. If this month is April, then the next month is May. Well, that's a true statement. Great. How about this one? If a quadrilateral has 4 90-degree angles, then it is a square. Well, that statement is actually false. And so if we want to show that it's false for real, we have to provide a counterexample. And so all I have to do is provide an example where this statement is no longer true. So if a quadrilateral has 4 90-degree angles, I've got to show you that it doesn't have to be a square. And the easiest way to do that is to draw a rectangle. That's not a square. Notice that here we see each of the 4 angles measures 90 degrees, and yet that is definitely not a square. We've produced a counterexample to this conditional statement. Neat. How about this one? This is really tricky, by the way. So let me just warn you right now that this one we have to be careful with. Even mathematicians furrow their brow when they see things like this. Let's read it together and think about it. If 121 is a prime number, then 10 is a multiple of 3. Well, there's a lot going on here. First of all, the first thing we notice is that you're saying, wait a minute, 10 is not a multiple of 3. So maybe this statement should be considered false. But it turns out that this statement is true. And you know why? Because the hypothesis, the statement right after the if, is false. Because 121 is not a prime number. 121 is actually 11 multiplied by 11. So it's not a prime. So this statement is saying, if 121 is prime, well, but 121 is not prime, which means that whatever follows is completely fine. This statement is vacuously true. It's true sort of by default because we don't even sort of get off the ground, if you will. Basically, if you have a conditional statement where you have if and then the thing that follows is false, then no matter what is written after the then, that entire statement, that conditional statement, is considered true. Like I said, this is really tricky, but it's important to remember that if you see an if something, then something else, and if the first something turns out to be a false statement, then the entire conditional statement will be true by default. Tricky business, but neat stuff.